They were overshadowed by their South American neighbours and bitter rivals Argentina. Out of the World Cup in the second knockout game, a lack of icon players, single aging superstar. If all of that sounds, well, reasonably familiar, then you'd probably be forgiven for thinking that this was a description of Brazil at the recent 2026 World Cup. But Brazil, in fact, have been here before, and there are a number of striking similarities between this recent World Cup and 1986. But just with one notable difference. Brazil were at least still playing the beautiful game. I think if you ask most football fans to list Brazil's most iconic players, you'd probably end up with the normal list of suspects. Pelé, obviously, Jairzinho, R9, Ronaldinho, Neymar even. But the 86 and the prior 82 team are somewhat largely forgotten. So why is that? Because the reality is that, in fact, there were a number of superstars in that team. There were iconic players. Socrates, Zico, Falcao, Careca even scored 5 goals in that tournament, just one behind Gary Lineker. Socrates and Zico in particular were and still are considered two of the greatest midfielders to ever have played the game. And within Brazil, the 86 and 82 squads are well thought of. They stuck, most importantly, to the principles of the beautiful game. The quarter-final loss was, well, it was seen in some quarters as heroic. A legitimate World Cup classic. Finished 1-1 after extra time, after goals from Careca and then an equaliser from Michel Platini, before finally Brazil caved in to the cruelty of penalty kicks. I think unfortunately prior and future generations set a somewhat high bar, didn't they? Winning 5 World Cups means that, well, going out in successive tournaments from 1982 to 1990 probably isn't an awful lot to reminisce about. The truth is, they were a good Brazilian team. Easy on the eye, skillful, plenty of goals. Held true to the traditions of Brazilian football. I think, unfortunately, they were just victims of the success of other winning Brazilian teams. The fallout from that defeat to France pretty much signalled the end of that generation. And in the aftermath, the likes of Zico, Socrates, Falcao never played a competitive game for Brazil again. Even the coach, Tele Santana, said as he left the stadium in 1986, "I'm not in love with football anymore. I'll only coach again if I need the money." In the end, it was a sad way to bow out for a generation of players that had promised so much and had a genuine affinity with the Brazilian fans back home. The left back and occasional midfielder Junior summed it up somewhat philosophically by just saying, "Our generation just weren't meant to be champions." Later on in that tournament, even worse was to follow as their great rivals Argentina, led by the inspirational Maradona, went on to win the 1986 World Cup. Happier times, of course, were to follow, as finally in 1994, a wait of 24 years was over when the likes of Branco, Bebeto, Dunga, Romario, Cafu, and a young Ronaldo as well got their hands on the trophy. In 2002, a golden generation consisting of Cafu, Carlos, Ronaldo, Rivaldo, Ronaldinho, and a young Kaká as well got their hands on the trophy for a second time in 3 attempts. And it was probably only the disruption of the illness to Ronaldo in the final in 1998 that stopped it being 3 consecutive trophies. I think in the end, history will look favourably upon this 80s generation of Brazilian players. They may have committed the quote-unquote crime of not winning the World Cup, but they had an identity, they connected with the fans, and they were genuinely loved back home. If you look at where Brazil are now in comparison, by the time the 2030 World Cup kicks off, it will have been 28 years since Brazil won it. That is simply unthinkable for a country such as Brazil. Not only will that be their longest stretch without winning it, but also the longest stretch without even an appearance in the final. They've gone through a series of coaches, with the latest being a somewhat pragmatic Italian, albeit a very successful pragmatic Italian. But where does that leave the principles of the beautiful game? So what do you all think? How does this 1986 Brazilian squad rank in comparison to some of the other great Brazilian teams, the teams of 1970 and 94, 2002? Can this proud footballing nation once again step out of the shadows of their great rivals Argentina and maybe win the World Cup for a sixth time? Let me know what you think in the comments, and please, if you've enjoyed this video, if you like this kind of content, then subscribe to the channel, give a like and share. It will help me greatly. See you next time.